Join him is Labor MP for Macnamara, Josh Burns, and Liberal MP, member for Flinders, Zoe McKenzie. Great to see you both. Josh, you gave a speech this week. I want to bring this to the attention of our viewers. At the University of Melbourne, you have every right to be giving a speech on your issue, which was about human rights. Can you explain to our viewers the complexity around this? Because it wasn't as easy as you showing up and delivering a speech, as you as a Member of Parliament should be able to do.
Well, good afternoon, KG, and good afternoon, Zoe. The speech that I was giving at Melbourne University was in line with my role as the chair of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Human Rights, and I put forward the case that Australia should consider enacting a Human Rights Act, and that was what my speech was about. It was about our domestic human rights obligations and our commitments and how we can strengthen protections for the Australian people. It had nothing to do with the Middle East. It had nothing to do with the conflict that's happening on the other side of the world, and yet there were some people who thought it was a wise idea to protest my speech and try and prevent it from happening. But thankfully, arrangements were made by the University of Melbourne and the Australian Federal Police to ensure that the event could go ahead safely, not only for myself, but also for my staff and for the other participants. And it did. It went ahead without any issues, and I'm very grateful for the university and the Federal Police for keeping us all safe. And I wish it wasn't necessary, but that's a bit of a reflection of the state of politics in 2024.
So, what was the concern that the protesters, what were they trying to argue?
Well, I certainly don't speak for the protesters. I don't necessarily understand what their motivation was. I can speculate, but all I know is that this speech had nothing to do with the Middle East. If
it's because you're Jewish, that is completely appalling.
Well, I've been targeted because of my Jewish identity in the past, and I would hope that it was not because I am Jewish. There seems to be a whole range of other issues that could have been the focus of their attention, but they seem to be fixated on me and on my role. But look, one thing I will say, KG, is we're not going to back down because of some silly protesters. I mean, if these students want to protest against me, that's their democratic right, and I'll defend their right to do so. But I know who I am, I know what I was arguing, and I know what I was there to do, and I won't be cowering to these young student protesters. I will make sure that I continue to do my job and continue to interact with the wonderful people that I'm privileged to represent.
And credit to the University of Melbourne and its leadership, Professor Michael Wesley, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, who we know well on this program, Zoe McKenzie, in pushing back against this ridiculous notion that Josh Burns shouldn't be able to address their university on such an important issue.
Exactly, and I congratulate Josh for his moral courage on this point. As so many, I may disagree with him in relation to a Human Rights Act, but I certainly agree with him in the position he has taken in relation to the Middle East. His approach with wisdom and a hope for peace that he has maintained throughout. So it was good that he was given the opportunity to present at Melbourne University. I should say it would be better if the universities, indeed the police, indeed the Albanese government had been clearer about condemning some of these protests we have seen. They have been vile in their nature. They should have been more clearly condemned at the time, stemmed at the bud, one might say. They haven't been, but nevertheless things appear to have been restored to some calm and inclusion at this point in time, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that is absolutely a good thing. Now let's look at the issue that's going to dominate so much attention over the next a bit less than a year, probably until the next election. Josh, the CPI, you could almost hear the sigh of relief from within the government when that inflation number dropped yesterday.
Well, I mean, obviously there is downward pressure on inflation, and that's really important, KG, and even the Reserve Bank themselves acknowledged the fact that we have run 2 surpluses in a row has assisted with the management of inflation. But no one's pretending that it's easy for the Australian people right now. I mean, it's not. I know people are spending less and are feeling the pressure right now. They've got huge pressures in their mortgages or their rent, their grocery bills. No one's doing it really easy right now, and I think that we need to keep working to ensure that inflation continues to come down and that people can not only get by but also get ahead. and that's the work that is in front of us, and we'll continue to manage the budget responsibly and continue to work to ensure that Australians can afford more and keep more of what they earn.
And that hope for a soft landing, Zoe McKenzie, I had the Treasurer on the program yesterday, and that is still their hope and plan. So given the number yesterday, isn't that still on track?
Look, we talk a lot about a soft landing, a narrow path and all those things, but it's not the lived experience of the average Australian. I've got closed shops, particularly hospitality. I think we've had 11,000 hospitality businesses go out of business in the last 12 months in this country. That's 50% more than the year before. Hospitality is the lifeblood of my electorate. I need vibrant, dynamic hospitality and people feeling confident that they can spend a bit of money on a weekend away. That is not the situation in which people find themselves at the moment. Prices are up across the board. Food, rent, electricity, gas. It's becoming really difficult to make ends meet. As I've said before, people come out of the shopping centre with, bags rather than trolleys as they may have done before. So people are struggling, people are doing it tough. We still have one of the highest core inflation rates amongst the G10 countries. We are still heading in the wrong direction. Enormous pressure on the RBA next week. We'll see where they land.
Yeah, we will see where they land. Josh, just to wrap up with you both, as we look to the next election, this is the key issue though, isn't it, Josh? The polls still have the government either in front or neck and neck on a two-party basis. It looks like Labor still pretty well placed, but if you face one or two rate rises, that well-positioned political outlook would turn pretty quickly.
Look, one thing we're really focused on is the cost of living pressures that are facing Australian people every single day. And there has been really responsible economic management. There's been two surpluses, the first in over a decade, led by Jim Chalmers and obviously the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. We're here to ensure that where we can assist people with the pressures of cost of living, we're doing so with tax reductions, with making medicines cheaper, with reducing the cost of childcare, or trying to bring down the cost of electricity. This is a cross-government effort where we're not resting on our work thus far. We've done a lot to try and ensure that inflation does come down. We inherited obviously at a much higher rate, but we'll continue to work hard right up until the election and beyond to try and make sure that Australians can get ahead and afford more, all of the things that they need to keep their families well fed and safe and secure and living a good life here in Australia.
And there is still a trajectory, Zoe. I know the lived experience is tough, and we've spoken a lot about those, not just households, but businesses struggling right now. But there is a scenario, according to many economists, that they still see a rate cut possible before the next election.
Well, we'll see about that. A couple of days ago, people were talking about persistent rate increases next year. You can't just repeat responsible economic management and claim that it is thus. Look at the facts. $315 billion in new spending, $30,000 in spending per household. They are still pump priming this economy, leaving the RBA holding all the levers in terms of settling things down. So you can't keep saying you're fixing the economy when if you look at the facts and figures, it says something different.
Zoe, Josh, thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, KG.